Welcome, my friends. This is Maniacal Incorporated, and at the end of the last episode, there were two major things that I failed to notice. The first was that we are still on volunteer only. I had convinced myself that we were on limited conscription, so I've been complaining that we have nobody to fly our planes or drive around our submarines. So we could work towards getting limited conscription, but there isn't much of a point, because the other thing I fail to realise is how close to the very end we are. Once the war ends, we have two foci to work on, and that could be very much the end. So we're going to get it finished today. It looks like Ireland is going to spend the entirety of the war trying to take Lisbon. Urban expansion and modernisation has finished, giving us increased infrastructure in Leinster and Northern Ireland, which badly needs it. The next one I'm going to go for is General Hock's return, which is going to give us an extra assignable trait slot for Jack White and Frank Ryan. I'm not too sure either of the two of them will ever use them. Fair play to them. I was just about to say that the Spanish are attempting to push on the outskirts of Lisbon, but I don't see that succeeding. Well, it did, but much more important than that, they have taken Gibraltar and Seville and are pushing up on Lisbon. And we've made a bit of a push and have managed now to completely surround the capital. And a hefty charge on Lisbon results in the capitulation of Portugal, and we are just 4 days out from allaying loyalist fears completely and wiping out this malice. And so, after a lengthy period of time, a rebellion in Northern Ireland and the expenditure of a hefty amount of political power, the establishment of a true socialist Irish Republic has calmed the storm. While plenty of mutual distrust and suspicion remains between the two communities, the majority of both Ulster's Catholics and Protestants alike have become contented with the status quo. The Isle of Ireland is no longer a deep and troubled land. So we gain political power, base stability, popularity of radical socialism and social democracy goes up, Northern Ireland compliance, so I'm getting a pop-up every once in a while that they're not too happy. It's usually up around here that they're not too happy with being occupied. We can enable the integration occupation law and modify reluctant countrymen. And we get some manpower. Oh, hell's bells, we get a lot of manpower that vanishes straight away. And what perfect timing. Just as Northern Ireland returns, so too does General Hock, who led a French expedition to Ireland prior to the 1798 rebellion. And I think what we'll do is just focus on supporting the Irish Air Corps at this stage. And with Portugal finally defeated, Tom Barry is free to march through Spain and head to the front line. I was going to send him to the front line against the Vatican. Well, it looks like they heard the Irish were coming and they are collapsing. Speaking of collapsing, Kaiser Wilhelm II is dead. A few moments ago we received the news that Sardinia had capitulated. Denmark has followed. But the German Empire is still holding on to a degree, and indeed is trying to push through Leipzig to reunify its empire. And there we can see Irish forces arriving to the north. There is still an unchanged front line since they set out from Spain. The very promising naval invasion on the outskirts of Rome by the Italians has failed. So originally when I said it was unlikely I would need to do this, I was wrong. We are, in what we thought would be the dying days of the war, going to be required to implement limited conscription. And having spent the majority of the war in Ireland doing nothing, Frank Ryan arrives in Scotland. I'm going to march him south and try and get him to France, because I have deployed 2 new units. In Ireland, we see threats of a Western Mediterranean invasion. I've deployed 2 new units in Ireland, and I am going to put them under the command of the other figure who returned when the Labour Party was restored to power by the Union of Britain, Sean Murray. And we're going to take a risk with Frank Ryan, a 30% chance to reach Calais without being intercepted. Warsaw has fallen. And Frank Ryan has reached his new home for the next while, just outside Frankfurt. He'll be taking part on the push on Nuremberg. With no immediate end in sight to this war, I'm going to need to modernise machine tools and equipment so that we can form the Irish Mineral and Ore Institute and get some resources. A successful but costly push on the Papal front gets us a bit of territory, but there's quite a large Papal force being massed here. And no sooner have we taken the area than we are pushed right back out. Now, I won't lie, I didn't realise Germany had all this as well somehow. I'm not too sure how they managed to put this together, maybe pushing through Hungary or something. But Russia is now on the verge of taking out their holdings that the Commune of France is trying to push against. I think they've made a bit of a push towards Breslau. And they've managed to stop the German Empire from pushing through around Leipzig, but at the moment there isn't a huge amount of movement on the Commune of France, Ireland side of things. For all his lengthy service, Tom Barry is finally going to be appointed to the High Command. Just as another major push on Breslau fails and starts again and begins to succeed and then not succeed. And Russia and the Commune of France are now just a single territory away from each other. Not exactly the kind of action we wanted to take, but Frank Ryan carries out a full frontal assault on Würzburg. How unexpected is true. The Lithuanian-Belarusian Federation has emerged. There's more of the German Empire. These lads are everywhere. And to follow that up, the Bulgarian Socialist Republic has taken Greece, an unfortunate setback for all of the Moscow Accord. And speaking of the Moscow Accord, the Commune of Britain and the Russian state now share a border. Breslau has fallen, and Königsberg, I think, has become the new capital of the German Empire, surely in its final days. Machines modernized, highways maintained. We will begin the process of completing urban electrification. At the moment, we're importing everything we need, but I'm not building anything anymore because I don't have the manpower for the submarines, and also we're out of the range that the Air Force would be effective. So even though I'm expanding the bauxite mines in Northern Ireland, there isn't actually need to do so at the moment. Manpower, manpower, manpower. That's what we need. And what a glorious day this is as the gavel starts flashing like a lunatic up in the corner. Northern Ireland is now a core of the Irish Socialist Republic. And boys, oh boys, look at that for manpower. 27,000. How much of that is going to disappear when I unpause? Because we have some casualties. I think the rest of that could go into the Air Force. A chunk of that could go into the Air Force, which I've actually moved to somewhere in France, and they're assisting somewhat with the frontier on the Papal States. So I might be able to expand the Air Corps with that. And now that we actually have some manpower, the Commonwealth of America wants to provide 67 Dodge 1937 2.5 tons. Sure, we'll accept your junk. It was covered up by several other announcements, so I didn't actually realise until I moved the newspaper from behind the back of the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies that the cowardly German nation has capitulated. At least to the Moscow Accord. do you know what? If nothing else, this deserves a drink. So Germany and the Russian state still seem to be at war. The Russian state somehow managed to take a chunk of land around, including Nuremberg, which the Germans have just taken back. As we take advantage of the brief appearance of the Russian state in this area to push further on Nuremberg, the Polish People's Republic has capitulated to the Moscow Accord. It's 1942 and Owen Sheehy Skeffington has pretty much built every single factory it is possible to build, even though we'll be getting some more shortly. However, I'm going to have him resign from the government and replace him with Noel Brown for the division attrition and experienced soldier losses decreases, and the decrease to the chances of air accidents. And because we need to open up the trade hub, Frank Ryan leads another push, this time seizing Nuremberg. We're now in a position to support Irish distilleries and breweries. I'm sure we've been supporting Irish distilleries for a long time. Civilian factory in Munster and in Leinster. Next we're going to go for the Casement Aerodrome to increase air range predominantly by 10%. Bohemia has been torn to shreds by the Russian state and has capitulated, and I've only just seen now that Italy is heading in every possible direction except for concentrating on its front with the Papal States. Frank Ryan has managed to split what remains of the German Empire in this region, opening up a lengthy front, and we're trying to break this encirclement here, as the Germans also try and head north and break out of it. There have been a whole heap of pop-ups, the fall of Vienna, several different treaties being signed in Moscow and Paris, and the declaration that the Reich Pact has collapsed. The end is near. And there we go. The war is over, and now the great victorious powers, the Union of Britain, the Commune of France, the Russian state, and Ireland, will divide Europe and the world between them. And for its role in the Weltkrieg, Ireland will demand Haiti. I can only imagine that the Irish government is absolutely staggered that their demand has been accepted. Germany is being ripped apart by the Commune of France and by the Union of Britain. So do you know what? We're gonna kind of meekly ask if we can also have half of Cuba. And unfortunately, it looks like Ireland will have to content itself with its new possessions in Haiti. Havana is contested by the Union of Britain and the Russian state. We will forfeit. We won't cause a war over it. The Commune of France took 18 states, the Russian state took 24, the Irish Socialist Republic took 1. The Union of Britain got 7. Cuba was annexed, Albania was annexed, 72,000 pieces of equipment were seized. So here we are in Ireland's new socialist colonial possession of Haiti, just off the coast of the Russian state of Cuba. Looks like the Russian state defeated the Union of Britain in its demands for Havana, at least. There is still a war to be fought, however, and more peace negotiations to be made. The Austrian Empire has capitulated, and we've earned a couple of points as a part of this war as well. However, I don't think we'll be demanding any territory. Because for now, our main concern is getting Frank Ryan's forces down to take part on the attack on the Papal States. And finally, even though Frank Ryan's forces have not yet arrived, we're seeing a massive collapse in the eastern part of the front. Sardinia has surrendered, so I think Italy is now actually able to bring its forces to bear. There is absolute chaos in Italy. Rome is totally surrounded and is on the verge of collapse. The Italians have just carried off a successful landing, which has allowed them to then push on Florence. Frank Ryan has come down in this direction and was actually pushing to try and join up with them. So what was once 2 very tidy lines by us have now become 3. The siege around Rome has been lifted, but the two Sicilies have capitulated. And we're beginning to mop up the last region. That region caused Tom Barry a tremendous amount of trouble. And it's a push through the two Sicilies by Italy, which captures Rome and forces the capitulation of the Papal States. And so, with the defeat of the Papal States, it is time to bring Ireland's syndicalist journey to an end. We have completed the liberation of Europe, and we have protected our freedom, which establishes William O'Brien as the successor of Connolly. Many in the world would argue that Ireland's unique state of affairs is only natural, considering that we're different from many of the other syndicalist revolutions in that it came about in an attempt to defend the existing parliamentary order. But we would argue that it is only natural, for the events were in truth simply a reassertion of the Irish Republic's socialist promises in the democratic programme, and that the new state of affairs has been brought about not by the victory of any one side over the other, but by compromise within the left-wing groups in Ireland. The compromises demanded much of William O'Brien, a moderate socialist who has only, with deep reluctance, accepted his country's alignment with the syndicalist bloc, and Owen Sheehy Skeffington, who too, in light of his pacifist views, has regretted Irish military involvement in the Second Weltkrieg despite its necessity. These trade-offs, however, have proven to be more than worth it as the Isle advances into a future where none shall ever again know the horrors of war or capitalist exploitation, while retaining the parliamentary democracy envisaged by the founders of the Republic. Compromise is the work of mature people, and while the fight may not yet be over, it is clear that Ireland's future has now been irrevocably shaped by the radical wing of the Labour Party. At the end of the last episode, I was just two foci away from getting that end screen, the return of Hock and the liberation of Europe. All I needed was for the Weltkrieg to come to an end, and that took a lot longer than I expected. There are still a number of conflicts in the world to be mopped up, including Iceland, who we are at war with. So Tom Barry has brought his troops to Cherbourg and is preparing for a naval invasion. What an incredible military career he's had. Since 1936, took part in the Spanish Civil War, fought in Miami and Denver. In the American Civil War, returned to Ireland to put down the rebellion in Northern Ireland, and then served in the Weltkrieg in Portugal, first of all, and then not doing a whole heap, but holding the line against the Papal States in Italy. And what an adventure it has been for William O'Brien as well. Democratically elected as leader of Ireland, overthrown by an IRA coup, and then restored as a puppet ruler of the Union of Britain. A big thank you again to North Midwest from the Up With The Stars Discord for suggesting this path. I really enjoyed it. And I might later on return to maybe see through the Sayre era path, because there's an added bit of balance there. You need to get your policies true without upsetting people so much that the Union of Britain replaces you with Jim Larkin. But the next playthrough that I'm going to do in Kaiserreich is going to be Eamon de Valera and Saoirstoit Christoul. So do let me know which of the assistants, the deputies, you would like me to see him take on, because I think he can take on either the National Development Party of Sean Lemass or Aontas Nó Siúnta and Owen O'Duffy. So do let me know below in the comments which of the two of those you would like me to undertake when I start my Eamon de Valera playthrough. Thank you to everybody who has joined me on this series. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for the likes, thank you for the comments, and thank you for rising high the starry plough.